a stream. Is it going to work? I always find this stressful. Sending data. Sending data indeed. Streaming on LinkedIn. That's good. That's good. LinkedIn's working. YouTube's working. Well, it's been a while, eh? So, literally the first, within seconds of going online, I'm getting texted. Oh no, I'm not getting texted. I'm getting notified that I'm live. Where have I been? It's a good question. If I had a really big audience, that audience probably would have been like, Matt, where you been? What's been going on, bud? What's been going on? What's been going on? What's been going on? So I think it's kind of mid-December that I stopped really doing any videos, and part of it was that I was part of it is at this studio, which is in a shed in the garden. It's quite cold in the shed, so it wasn't really so much that, because it's kind of like, you know, you could there's a heater in here, but even with the heating on, it's really quite humid. The garden was muddy, etc. That was half the problem. The other half of the problem was that I had surgery scheduled for January, which was I was really anxious about it. So I kind of took my eye off the ball with loads of stuff, really. But mostly the video stuff just kind of went to pot. The other thing was I tried to get somebody to do the editing for me, because it's like the writing I don't mind, the recording I don't mind. The editing is fine. I actually don't mind doing it, but it takes forever. It takes a really long time. So if I do a 4-minute video, it takes a couple of hours to edit. So I mean, it can take me half a day or a day to edit a sort of a reasonable length video. And I thought, actually, you know what, I'll just try and get this outsourced. And this was just an object lesson in how difficult it is to get technical outsourcing done. So I found this guy on Freelancer, and his stuff seemed all right. There were loads of like freelancers and stuff on there who this stuff was really dreck. This guy seemed okay. Had a conversation with him. It's just kind of like, look, it was only like a couple of £100. So it's like, actually, it's sort of worth throwing money at it to see whether it works, right? So, yeah. So there's one of these problems, which is where outsourcing gets really difficult, especially when you are outsourcing or offshoring a kind of a price premium. So this guy was based in the UK, but I don't think he was doing the actual editing. I think he was sending it back. He was from Eastern Europe, but based in the UK, and I think he was sending it back to Eastern Europe, which I don't have a problem with. It was fine. I was very clear with him about that. I didn't really have an issue with this. But what I wanted to do is, if you've seen any of my videos, you know that I like to put I like to have, because the stuff I talk about is kind of dull, right? Like I try and make it interesting, but fundamentally it is a dull subject. This is not Mr. Beast. This is not even Linus Tech Tips. This is not even Adrian's Digital Basement, which has got kind of, it's one of my favorite YouTubers. It's boring, right? And it's quite dense, and it's quite boring, and it's quite fast. So I like to kind of have something going on the screen about every 7 seconds. Like, I like to have a new bit of video or a new bit of text or some animation, just something. So if you are watching it, it's kind of, there's something going on, right? And I explained this to this guy, and I said, look, we've got, and the way that I do it is, I've got a video subscription to something. Can't remember what it is now. It's not a good one. I do it because I bought it, and it was kind of had by a year up front, and it was that in itself was like £300 or something. And I was like, oh, I've bought it. It's not great. The videos aren't what I want. I wanted to use a different service. But what I did was I built like a little Windows Form app that will go and look at the videos, and then you can kind of, it uses FFmpeg to get like a thumbnail of the video. So you just go into this Windows Forms app, you can see all the stuff that's there. You've got like a little search, you can kind of add keywords against each video if you want to go back and find stuff. And then if you want to put it onto, I use DaVinci, right? So you just kind of like, it uses Windows drag and drop, so you drag the thing out of this tool and drop it in. So I said to him, I want you to use this because it's a really efficient way of managing the media, and here's a Teams site. Put all the videos on Teams, shared it with him. So obviously all he needs to know is just put one drive on, sync all the videos locally, and there he goes, right? easy peasy. And he kept pushing back on it, and I was just kind of like, okay, look, I want this stuff done. So he produced this video, and it was, I'm not really having a go at him, although I realise now it does look like I'm kind of having a go at him. I'm not. I'm sort of talking about, this is sort of the communication. I didn't feel that I was communicating poorly on this, but I also feel like I'm kind of an expert in sort of communicating, giving instruction to offshore resources, right? So he sent this video back, and it was kind of like he'd used his own videos, and it's like, why have you done that? It wasn't that I had a problem with the quality of the videos. It was that none of them made any sense. There was, because the videos I use, they're kind of roughly thematically linked. They don't look like I've gone to 10 different free video clip sites and just grabbed everything and just put it together, right? They're all more or less from the same source. They're all kind of the same thing. And then if I'm not using a video sort of as a sort of a quasi B-roll, then I'll kind of put some animations in, and I'll do the animations based on it to kind of just deliver the punch to what I'm talking about, right? So I said, look, you just you got to use my videos, because it looks awful, and he hadn't done any of the text. But then part of what he'd done was kind of like, yeah, this is great. This is really good. I like he'd really done some things that kind of brought some stuff to life, and it was kind of, this is great. This works. And yeah, and then what happened? Yeah. Then he used my videos, and then he decided that he was only going to do like a scene change every 45 to 50 seconds. I'm like, no, it's kind of, that's too slow. So it has me doing like I'm doing now, which is kind of like an acquired taste. Has got to be, right? Yeah, I wasn't like, so I had to knock that on the head, and it kind of put me off doing any of the longer form stuff, because I kind of was like, well, I've got so much work going on that it's really difficult to find the time to do these longer form videos. And I kind of, at the same time, because of the stuff with the hospital, I kind of dropped off doing the short form stuff as well. And it was and I think some of the thing with the short form stuff I've got to solve as well. I kind of wasn't, because I want to get back into doing that, so I want to do, after I've done this evening, I want to come back and do a short form one as well. It was kind of, I wasn't happy with how some of those were coming out. Like, I think I'd sort of said what it is I needed to say for a kind of a big kind of thematic block of work. And yeah, so anyway, the surgery was fun. Yeah, I had I've got Crohn's disease, so I had it was quite a big surgery. But anyway, I'm feeling all right. So yeah, so trying to do back on the videos. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to get myself back. Oh, I'm running out of disk space. Let me just double check whether I'm going to crash running out of. Yeah, I am going to crash running out of space. So this is just going to fix live on production. This is what we don't do. We don't go in and we don't start deleting random things off disks in order to make space in production, do we? No, we don't. So what else happened? So I have written a book. This is about yay thick, which is 60,000 words, I think. So if you get a book that's about that thick, it's about 60,000 words. This is a book called Buying Complex IT Systems, Computer Systems Procurement for Non-Technical Managers. So I do a lot of content on this sort of topic, and it was, yeah, really interesting how the publishing industry works so far. So people who kind of know me personally know that I've written quite a lot of books. So I wrote my first book, started it back in 1999. That's published in 2000, and that was a book called Beginning E-Commerce by Rocks Press that ended up going bankrupt. Yeah, which kind of really sucked. But the idea, what I wanted to do with that book was, this was at the time of the dot-com boom, and I was working out in Phoenix, Arizona at the time. I've been out there a few years, and I had sort of had it with my ex-boss, and I needed to leave. But because of the visa that I was on one of those key person investment visas, right? So I didn't have a degree. I then couldn't come back I couldn't get another visa, so I couldn't get an H1B or anything. I had to come back to the UK, and it was kind of like I was on a 3-month notice period, so I couldn't come back into the UK and find a job. In hindsight, that would have been the worst thing for me, right? I would have hated to have come back and gone into employment. I needed to set up self-employed, which is what I ultimately did. But I wrote to Rox Press because I'd always wanted to write a book, right? And there was loads of Java books out at the time, but I hadn't done any Java. This was pre.NET, right? So this was 1999. But e-commerce was a thing, and the dot-com boom was a thing. And it was kind of like there was loads of people who were kind of making money out of building .NET e-commerce platforms and e-commerce kind of bits and pieces. And I was like, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to do a book, which is how you write one from scratch. So if all you have is the basic tools, how can you write an e-commerce book without anything? And so I sat down and wrote a book, which was how you did it using Visual Basic 6, which was a thing at the time, SQL Server 7, version 7 to 6.5, because 6.5 was crappy, right? So is that what happened? Did Microsoft buy SQL Server? Can't remember. Yeah, because their database technology at that time was Jet, right? So I think they bought SQL Server in. I'll go and look that up afterwards. But it was SQL Server 7, it was MTS, and it was COM+ components. So we were basically using Visual Basic to create COM+ components and then hosting those somehow in IIS and then putting it all together with ASP. Yeah, so it was an ASP front end calling VB6 COM components in MTS backed onto SQL Server. And the book was great. It was kind of, it sold loads. Like, it sold just a fantastic, the publisher loved me. It was kind of, it was a really, really popular book. And the weird thing about it is that I wrote this before I got diagnosed with Crohn's disease, and I had surgery in November of 2000, which is about 6 months after that book came out. And I made so much money out of royalties to that book, it made up for the fact that I had to take 6 months off work, either side of having this, ultimately, I got very ill, and it kind of turned out it was Crohn's disease, but I was undiagnosed. And then after getting diagnosed, anyway, so what was that about? Oh yeah, I've written loads of books. I'd really like writing books, and it's kind of like whenever I kind of do a big sort of change into this is sort of a thing that I kind of want to do much more work in the area of, I was like, well, I'll go away and I'll do this book. But this thing has taken forever to produce, and it's kind of it's interesting now. So much content is kind of like video, because even long form written content is kind of dead, right? People are only really interested in video, short form or long form video. So I started socializing it with publishers in November 2022. This first version of this book was written in March 2023, and it's only on Amazon 2 days ago. So that took a year, and I'm not saying that some of that delay wasn't me. Some of that delay clearly was me. The old Douglas Adams things. I love the sound of deadlines. I love deadlines. I love the sound they make as they whoosh by. There was. But even the process, like if I were working to the timetable they want, it's all really interesting now that it takes so long to produce a book. Anyway, this book is about the area that's really important to me, which is how, when you're working with a non-technical team, how do you safely purchase IT services? And the idea of this book is that it takes you through how to, rather than the work that I often do is going into a company and kind of mopping up problems where an IT systems procurement process has gone badly wrong, you can kind of, this is what you need to do first in order to make it not go badly wrong, right? So, that's what this book is about. It's £40, I think, on Amazon, or it might be £35. So it's, so reasonably spicy cost for a non-fiction business book. But seeing as, if you're looking to drop £100,000 on a piece of software and that book kind of helps you do that, then obviously there's some value there. So that was really good. So I've got some other topics I wanted to talk about. So one of them is kind of, I have to tread relatively carefully with, but I do want to kind of talk about this, which is that I at the minute have it does link into the book, because actually the book is a lot about actually how do you, when an IT project can go really badly wrong, you obviously have the option of litigation against the supplier, or even the supplier has the option of litigation against the customer. But if you kind of like say, we're going to spend £250,000 on picking something around a Microsoft Dynamics CRM implementation, and what I get isn't fit for purpose, then one remedy that you as a customer have is to go and sue the supplier, right? So there's some things in here in the book which are about, just because you win in court doesn't actually mean that you are going to get paid. So obviously if you win and the court sits there and makes an order and says, okay, well, you now owe this person, this claimant, some money, it's not automatic that you get that money. I know. So there are 3 cases I know at the minute where there's an order from the court that says that the money is owed to the claimant, and the claimant basically can't get it. One of them is, I can't really talk too much about what's going on with any of them, but it's kind of, you got to really, it's a big risk management piece. Like, you've got to ultimately, if you are going out there to spend a lot of money on some sort of solution as a customer, for the customer side, you do need to know that you have something which is litigatable. So one of the things that is sort of a classic that I talk to is when people go, I'm going to go and get this offshored in India or Thailand or whatever. And if you're a small startup business, or in fact, even if you're if you're anything less than like a £5 million turnover business, you effectively can't litigate overseas. It's too complicated. Like, you can possibly just about do it with an EU country. You may be able to do it with one of the other Five Eyes countries. But if you want to litigate in Thailand or Pakistan or India, it is, those kind of just cross-jurisdiction litigations are fantastically difficult. So your risk management has to be really different. So and from the customer's perspective, that means that you shouldn't be paying for stuff that you outside of your kind of comfort zone. From the supply side, it's interesting as well, because I do have a lot of IT suppliers that kind of follow me, so it's worth talking about this, which is that we, in the industry, we don't really think about payment terms as credit. And so we don't manage it with kind of like the governance or the robustness or kind of like that compliance head on, which is that actually, if I'm doing a project for a client, and let's say that project's relatively expensive, like £50,000, it's not beyond the wit of things to be owed £25,000 by that customer. Now, that could be a legitimate owing, that could be a legitimate claim that could be established. But again, even if you do have that claim, you don't necessarily know that you are going to see that money back. And that is that's a really interesting problem. So we're kind of thinking about some stuff that we're doing now where we try and kind of professionalize that a bit more and think more that payment terms are more like credit. But that's a different thing. So it's just be aware that you do need to, your path to litigation has to include your path to payment, right? So you can't just litigate. You have to get paid as well. So that's sort of an interesting thing. So I've got a few more things on the list that I kind of wanted to talk about, and some of them I can almost read my handwriting on, which is not too bad, actually, not too shabby. So one of the things that you often find when you're talking to startups is that they will kind of get tunnel visioned into building an app. This is more about kind of B2C or business to consumer kind of propositions, which is ultimately where you have to kind of get some consumer to modify the way in which they're doing what they do, right? For example, booking tyres. Let's do that, because actually I haven't got any conflict with a customer that does mobile tyre bookings. Let's think about that as an example. Let's say that you need to get a replacement tyre for your car, and you want to go. So you're sitting there on your phone, and it's like, okay, cool. Now I need to go and do that. What a lot of startups will do is they will kind of go, you need to build an app for that, and they will kind of encapsulate their relationship with the customer with an application that has to be installed. That's really difficult in terms of behavior, right? Because the customer doesn't necessarily think in that way. The customer is just trying to get some tyres done. So if they Google and say mobile tyre fitting, and it's like e-tyres, or I think Quick Fit, I think Halfords, all of them do mobile tyre fitting now, right? No, Halfords do ATS, maybe, I don't know. You can really find that startups will sit there and go, I'm going to build an app, and I'm going to get people to use the app, and then the app is going to have some value within it, but that value can only be presented through the app. And one of the pinch points that startups get to when they start spending money on those kind of solutions is that they will spend all of their budget delivering the app, and then find out that they have got this kind of behavior and abandonment problem between the intent and delivery of that value, right? So they might see an advert for mobile tyre fitting and go, oh yeah, I need some tyres. Great, I'll use mobile tyre fitting, rather than kind of having a faff. I can do it, in between my Zoom calls, rather than having to kind of faff around and go down to ATS or whatever. So yeah, and they'll sit there and go, we need an app, and no one will kind of tell them that they don't need an app, and then they'll go and spend their money they've got spending their MVP on an app, and then they'll go, wait, hang on, we've got this abandonment, this trough of abandonment in the middle, which is where we can kind of get the intent from the customer, but they're getting frustrated downloading the app. And even when we download the app, we kind of have got some UX problems in there, because we go through a big customer registration piece first, because that is, again, something that people tend to do. Whereas if we'd have just built a web app, we wouldn't have this problem. But now that we've spent all our money and done our version 1, we can't get back to having a web app, because the bespoke software, the software company that we dealt with to build this MVP, they weren't thinking, they didn't give us that guidance. So, yeah. And the funny thing is actually, if you kind of build it right from the outset, it tends to not be too difficult to kind of pivot those things. But you find that, spend a lot of time talking to people about, like recently over the past few months, I haven't been online so much, spending a lot more time talking to people about how their acquisition journey in terms of buying bespoke solutions for their products and their MVPs, and there's a lot of problems. So and the key problem is that they ironically don't get enough business advice. Like, you need to be sitting down and talking with somebody who kind of is going to be able to offer some value in terms of where the business you have is trying to go. And this is part of the classic example. Is a certain guy, you want an app? Yeah, cool. We'll do you an app. So, and again, I've done videos about this before, that you kind of, if you're engaging with a UK partner, you'll tend to get something quite consultative. If you're engaging with an offshore partner in, e.g. India, Pakistan or Thailand or whatever, you tend to get zero consultancy. But if you engage with someone in the middle, you kind of maybe get like a mix of that consultancy. But it's really important that you have people who are giving you advice. And the advice has to be, only build an app if it's absolutely essential to have someone within your ecosystem. And that really, for most of the startups, that's none of them. So a lot of, like, the easiest type of startup business to kind of go and build is B2B. And the easiest type of business to scale once you've got it established is B2B. B2C is really difficult, because you need to foment user change, and the only way that you can really foment user change is by putting loads of money into marketing, and putting money into marketing is fantastically expensive, because you have to rent someone's audience, right? So if you want to say, if you suddenly want everyone who's going down Quick Fit to going down a fitting centre to fit their tyres to suddenly doing everything mobile, you need something like Go Compare is a classic example, or yeah, I can't actually remember which one of those came first. Go Compare was it that Money Supermarket was the first one to do those aggregation platforms, but Go Compare was the first one to try and steal their market through really effective interruption marketing, right? I think that was it. was going to say, assume that was true. So yeah, you have to. It's really incredibly difficult to go to rent that audience. It's really expensive. So so most B2C tends to be that behavior change, that you deliver a message to somebody and goes, and it's normally, here is a different way of acquiring something. Actually, let me think about customers that we've spoken to a more B2C side recently. Yeah, none of them are really building something you need an app for. I even wonder what you would need an app for now these days. Like as the value point? I don't know. So no, the trick is you need to build a mobile web app. So that's great. Build it in React. So if you build it in React, or even if you build it in Angular, but personally I have grown to make my piece of React now, and it's sort of my preferred platform. Build it in React. If you want to run it natively, then you can just transpile it or faff around with it to an extent where it then will run as a native app. So yeah, that's sort of interesting. Hopefully, I say things are interesting, I just assume they are, but then probably no one's watching this. So does it matter? Probably not. Hosting and operational costs. So again, another thing that no one really thinks about, when the sort of classic model of a newbie founder who is coming into this sort of market naively, and I don't mean naive in a critical way, I mean naive as in the classical sense of they've never done this before, this is their first time, right? They've never really been burnt. That they will tend to go, we want to raise a sum of money, we want to do 50% of it on build, we want to do 50% of it on marketing, and we want to get 250 grand because that's what CDIS gives us now. And like, even that's sort of a thing. That's sort of strange, right? When CDIS was smaller, SEIS was smaller, everyone used to go for the everyone always goes to the SEIS limit, but that hasn't, the limit changed, but the amount of work to do hasn't really changed, right? You don't need that much money. Let's say, like a sensible sweet spot for a business would be, there's you and a business partner, there's one of you who knows how to do within your domain, there's one of you who knows to sell into your domain. You then go and find £100,000 from somebody, you spend £50,000 on the build, and you spend £50,000 on marketing. By the way, you are allowed to spend your own money, because this is a bit of a thing that we keep fighting at the minute, is that founders don't really like to spend their own money, and there's kind of this mindset that there's this magical pots of money out there that they can get access to, but realistically that's really difficult. So anyway, people will then go, we want 50 grand to build, or we want 50 grand to sell, and they'll look at it as kind of like, that's it. But there is a real problem with software in that it kind of, you have to keep spending money on it forever. There's two ways you have to spend money on it. One is that you have to keep developing and maintaining the product, and the other one is that you have to you have to keep developing and maintaining products. The other one is you have to run it, you have to host it somewhere, right? You have to maintain it, and hosting costs itself can be one of those things where there's a lot of lying going on. And also there's another big problem with that in the UK. Hosting provision is pretty terrible, right? So like, prior to Brexit, this problem was much more easily solved. Oh, you know what? I am going to lay this out. I'm going to do a video about this, about OVH. So yeah, I will do like a longer video about OVH. One of the problems that you have is that the market is served by three tiers, right? It's tier one, which is Amazon and AWS and Azure, and to an extent kind of Google Cloud and whatever. And then you have tier two, which is hosting provision, which is sold in a consultative fashion. And then you have tier three, which is kind of junk. And I say it's junk in the same way that this is done on a retail basis, on a very low cost, low touch basis. So the last thing that a tier 3 provider wants to do is have a meaningful relationship with the customer. They just want you to turn up, pay your credit cards. They want to have some automation that provides that platform. They want to have a support desk you can't phone up, and everything's done through tickets and live chat, or ideally not even through live chat, etc. And the way that pre-Brexit this worked was that there were really good tier 2 providers overseas. Hetzner was one that I'd used for years, and it was amazing. Their service was great. They were really efficient, really competent. Pricing was keen. A really fantastic hosting business. But they've got data. They're based out of Germany, and they've got data centers in Finland and Germany. I think they've got data centers in the US now as well. They don't have data centers in the UK. So from a Brexit perspective, although it's not beyond the wit of things to say to a customer, we need to start putting your servers in the EU and you need to have some sort of data portability, it's really complicated. It adds a lot of, especially the kind of clients that we deal with, it adds an awful lot of, do I really need to do this and keep up with it and make sure there's no changes and deal with all these obligations? It's really hard. So we now have to lodge within the UK, but within the UK, there's tier 1 and there's tier 3, and tier 1 as you're on AWS is insane. It's insanely expensive. And nobody, especially when you're doing a startup or a scale up business, if you happen to talk to developers don't care about money. They don't see money. They see the money that goes into their paycheck, and they see the money that they spend on, mid-market racing tier simulator chairs and stuff. Like they sit on, or I'm like this, so I'm not having a go, right? I went to this comics book store yesterday because there was Chris Barry from Red Dwarf was doing a signing, and I really like Red Dwarf. Well, I don't really like Red Dwarf. I'm borderline obsessed with Red Dwarf, and I wanted to go and I never got any of the cast to do any sign. No, that's not true. I got Holly, Hattie Hayridge to do a signing years back, but I hadn't got any of the core cast to do it. Chris Barry was there, went in, and they've got these display cases, and they've got like these Marvel limited edition statues, right? And they're like 600 quid a go, like 600. Why did I even get into this? How did I get from hosting? Developers, that's what developers like to spend their money on, right? They don't know how expensive Azure and AWS is. All they know is that they just want to put their stuff there. And as the principal of the business, you can sit there and go, well, this solution should cost me £1,000 a month to host, but it's actually costing me 5, 6, 7, 8,000, and these really out of control costs. Like I've got a client the other day who had some real problems with cost on AWS resourcing, not Azure resourcing. Anyway, tier 1 is very specific. Like most, if you're a startup or a scale-up business, you probably have no business being on Azure or AWS because it's not targeted at you. It's targeted at much bigger solutions. It's targeted at ones where you need a certain level of DevOps capability and spend within the organization in order to use that platform, platform as a service or infrastructure as a service effectively. You really want a tier 2 provider. You need to do something much more utilitarian, but there are no good tier 2 providers in the UK. There's only tier 3 providers. For example, OVH. Oh, wow, this was unbelievable, and it will so this was really unbelievable. I probably do need to do this as a longer form thing. OVH is based in France. They have a UK arm, but they have data centers in the UK and kind of all over the place. But the only thing that was important to me really was they had a data center in the UK, and their pricing was pretty keen. And I wouldn't necessarily have put them as a tier 3 provider, right? But okay. So I go and create the service. It costs it's a dedicated solution, dedicated server. It's 80 quid setup, 80 quid a month for a quite neatly spec'd machine. It's a Ryzen based machine, which I like, and it has the NVMe drives, which I like, and it has a DDR5 RAM because it's the Ryzen 7000, so it's got the really fast RAM, nice, NVMe drives. It's good and cheap. And this go on, we do all the thing, configure it, go to all the automation, comes to life, connect to it, futz around with it, put it down, bring it, and 18 hours later go back into it. I'm sitting there using it. I've been doing a few hours work on it, and it just disappears. We get this email. I get this email through saying, we've there's some billing problem with your account. Okay, fine. So I refresh the portal, I can't get into the portal. I was like, okay, fine. Do the password reset doesn't come through. Do this over the course of a couple of hours while I'm doing something else, and I'm like, okay, fine, I'll go and look in Exchange to see whether these emails are just getting blocked. And these emails are not getting blocked. So I'm like, okay, we're not receiving those emails. I'll create another account to go onto the live chat, because there's no phone number. You phone out the phone number, there's no phone number there. There's no live chat because I can't get into the portal. I can't do anything because I can't log in into their ecosystem. So create another chat, and he goes, oh, that's strange, I'll go and look into it for you. So he comes back and he goes, oh yeah, no, the validations team has shut down your account. There's no appeal, they won't explain why, and you're not getting a refund. And that's it. Dead. So I'm like, what do you mean? It's kind of, you can't just shut down the service like that. And they're like, and then this ticket sort of goes into this automated mode where they keep repeating the same thing. It's about this validations team. And so we're kind of like, oh man. So we get in touch with the bank and see if we can claw the money back, right? Because they're breach of contract at this point. Well, my claim is a breach of contract, but if I've got the money and they're trying to come after me, that's different. It's 200 quid. Is it that big a deal? They then start sending me net promoter survey emails through, and I'm like, what do you rate our service from 1 to 5? I'm like, really? Yeah. So I then kept writing back and sort of saying, being more pushy with this, kind of going, you are in breach of contract. You are blah, blah, blah. And eventually this thing comes back up. And I'm like, well, I can't use this now. This is completely useless to me. How am I supposed to? I can't put any client stuff on this. I can't use it for any myself. I can't recommend it to a client. The only thing I can do is the unrecommendation I am doing, which is this. So, yeah, I'm shocked. And it's kind of like we still haven't solved this tier 3 problem. And it kind of, or this tier 2 problem. Because though we've kind of been socializing that around some other providers, the providers are kind of talking kind of the right stuff. Okay, so they're sort of saying that, talking about the solution, it seems really good. It's expensive. It's really expensive. It's not Azure or AWS expensive, but it's clear that they are very much upper market. They've got people who are really good level 1, 2 and 3 techs who are then leading in and really keeping this stuff working, which is fine if you don't have DevOps capability. And it's kind of like, well, in the stuff we're doing, we do have that DevOps capability, so we don't need that. So we're kind of like, do we do co-locations? That's what we're doing at the minute. We're experimenting with that. It's kind of like, well, we can't put it on level 3, on tier 3, because customer stuff can just disappear. We can't put it on level 1 because it's too expensive, and I just won't. And the tier 2 providers seem to be, it's quite easy to find some smaller market co-location providers. The thing about co-location, which people don't talk about, right, is that fundamentally you can solve that problem with a van. You can go down, Hertz or Avis, or even, you can go to B&Q and get, it's a Hertz, isn't it? They do. They can go to B&Q or IKEA and get one of those same day pay as you go vans. You can go there, go to the data center, get your stuff, bring it back to wherever you live, and then sort the problem out. It's your equipment. You've only got to deal with access to the site. I think one of my classic kind of risk profiling problems that people don't really think about enough is supplier insolvency. And it's, could you find that effectively your servers are sitting powered off in a data center somewhere, and the the administrators won't let you go and get it? I don't know. I'd be interesting to test that, or interesting to see somebody else test that while from the sidelines. Yeah. So anyway, I have rambled on for 40 minutes. I am probably going to leave it there. And yeah, I don't know. I had a few messages come in, but I get very distracted if I start looking at them. but it has been I love Red Dwarf. Oh, Kendall. Oh, man. I bet you don't love Red Dwarf as much as I do. But I do remember, Kendall, that you do love Red Dwarf. I do. Yeah, definitely. So he did ask about this. Is that a problem with the tier 1 cloud or a problem people picking from the menu not thinking to click on sure I want the premium SQL server option instead of doing what I actually need? I'm going to pick that up with you separately on email, actually, because we did a consultancy exercise for a client and it was wicked expensive. So I'll drop you a DM. But cool. It's good to be back. Hopefully now I'll be back in the streaming chair every week. Thanks very much and have a good rest of your weekend. It's 3:30. Where's the weekend gone? I had fun this morning though. I actually did a little personal project which was good. Don't do enough of them. See you later.